I'd like to welcome Andrew Whale to the stage. Andrew's going to be talking about the benefits of assessing ewes as fit to join. Andrew's a vet consultant in Hamilton at Livestock Logic, and he's been working in that role for about 10 years. He's got extensive experience in sheep production systems in southern Australia, and he's also an excellent communicator with a real ability to give practical advice that helps farmers on the ground. He's delivered recently for a beef group for me, and our members just were absolutely rapt. So pay attention, and I hope you learn a lot. And I'll hand over to Andrew. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. I like the way you brought me down and then brought me up at the end. That was good. The worst session to a good communicator. Thanks MLA for the opportunity for today, and especially Opinion for pulling it all together. It's it's been really professionally and well run so far. So thanks, guys. I'm going to talk about the Fit to Join project work, which I guess, where's Leanne? Yeah, this is sort of Leanne's baby in a way that she's got plenty of things that she does this sort of work for. It's just one of the projects she's done, but she sort of put together the crew to deliver this, and I think there's been some good outcomes, which obviously I'll talk through today. And I will acknowledge at the end the rest of the team, but Basil also had a role in the economics side of this too. So thanks to those guys for their contribution. So this is all about assessing ewes prior to joining, so that we can take out the sheep that we know are going to be poor performers for the next 12 months, and we'll talk you through that. But I guess the likelihood of reproductive success for an animal is a factor of its ability to get in lamb, and then its ability to raise a lamb. And just they're two very different things, obviously. There's some factors that will affect both, but there's quite a few factors that we'll talk you through it, but they may actually improve the animal's ability to get in lamb, but then they have negative impacts on their ability to raise a lamb, which I will talk you through. But obviously we're trying to tie in both of those things. This is just a summary. I just wanted to give you, rather than just wait till the end to give you the numbers, this is what we saw in the difference in marking rates between sheep that were classified as fit to join and those that were unfit. So is there a spot to stand that you're not in someone's way? No. Just go and sit in one of the chairs. Yeah. Sorry, I'll try and, So essentially we saw 136% marking rates in our sheep classified as fit and 119 in the unfit. And that's just the average of all the three flocks that were in this case study, or the three case studies. One of them's a merino flock, one of them's a crossbred flock. Sorry, two crossbreds, one merino. So just to put that in perspective, 136% with a third of those ewes being merino, it's a pretty damn good number. Just giving you that initially, and there's a slight difference in ewe mortality of 0.5% in those sheep. So as I said before, we just think this provides an opportunity for advisors to help their producers get that next level of performance. And I guess why did this come about was because we were seeing on the farm level people that were trying to do everything right still weren't quite hitting those really good lamb survival targets and conception targets that we thought they should be. We're sort of questioning why, and just in a few discussions with a few clients, we sort of twigged that this assessing sheep with a bit of vigour prior to joining, or in the 4 to 6 weeks post weaning, wasn't being done. I will talk you through the farms a little bit more. A lot of people do the wet and dry at marking, and for some people that's a good thing. For some people it's not really that important. But they weren't then coming back at them and looking at these sheep on an individual basis, really, really quickly to see should they be kept for another 12 months or should they not. And I guess another reason that this was a topical project was that we were coming out of the drought, and there was a bit of a flock rebuild happening. Buying in new replacement sheep was expensive. What sheep can we keep on the farm for another year and still get value from? So the risk factors. The that we think you need to really be thinking about when you're assessing a mob of sheep. There's these 5 things here. So body condition score, udder health and structure, lameness, their teeth and their age. And I'll talk you through those specifics. So body condition score. We know it's important. We know why. It's really important for fertility, for conception, but also for their ability to give birth to good lambs or well-weighted lambs. So what sheep should we throw out? It's the sheep that are at least half a condition score lighter than the mob average, a sheep that we're sort of starting to hone in on for potentially having problems, and particularly if they're getting 1 condition score lighter than the average. So some people ask, or sort of when we put together these, the metrics of what we were going to get rid of, they said, well, wouldn't you have an absolute condition score? Wouldn't it just be anything that's under 2.5? And we said, well, no, because if you've got a farmer that's whole flock is averaging 2.5 condition score, we don't want to be getting rid of half the farm. So we want sheep that are struggling with the environment they're in. And again, if you've got a farmer that's everything's condition score 4 average, and he's got sheep that are 2.8, they're clearly going to struggle when the heat comes on in a high production environment or at lambing next year. So we're looking for those sheep that are outliers to the mob average, and it's the mob average more so than the farm average. Because again, you might have a mob of ewes that just were run really, really hard over lambing and they still haven't recovered. So just think about that. Within the mob, we're trying to identify the sheep that are outliers to the mob average. Udder health and structure. So this is something that I think it's so obvious when we talk about it, but I think it's almost that obvious that it's something we don't actually communicate with sheep producers that they need to think about doing. And a lot of bad udders pop up after weaning time. So the people that are wet and drying at marking or wet and drying at weaning will be missing a lot of udders. So we had feedback actually when we sent this sort of to be reviewed by people that said, oh, you know, you don't need to redo this because it's being done at weaning. We said, no, that's not true. There'll be 3 to 4% of sheep that'll pop up with really bad udders in the 4 to 6 weeks post-weaning. So the timing of this assessment is important. So obviously normal udder on the left, big lump on the right, and I think I'll just talk to this one. But so this is some work out of New Zealand that showed the impact of lamb survival and growth rate with bad udders. And there's sort of 3 different problems that were sort of categorised. So we had udder lumps or a hard udder. 7% of the flock was found to have these sort of lesions in New Zealand, and they had a 70% chance of losing 1 lamb, as opposed to the bottom line there where the average sheep, the healthy sheep, only has a 12% chance of losing 1 lamb. So big difference in lamb survival, and there you can see the impacts on lamb growth rates. Now similarly for abnormal teats and asymmetrical udders had the least effect on lamb survival, but a fairly significant impact on lamb growth rates. So they're the 3 things we're sort of trying to look at, and just to think about that practically when we were assessing them, anything with a lump over the teat or within the teat was an automatic cull, because we've got that scarring or firmness there that's going to stop milk production coming through the teat. And if we're down to 1 teat in most sheep, you know, we're not going to get really good outcomes for lamb survival. And then any lump that was sort of essentially bigger than a lemon, we were throwing out within the rest of the udder. And obviously anything that had a malformed teat or missing a teat, we actually didn't come across it with this work, but I know that the Balmoral sire evaluation work, they had a lot of sheep had teats being cut off at shearing time or crutching, and we don't really know why, but it's something we didn't see in this work. But there will be some farms where there will be quite not a lot, but there will be some sheep that will have lost teats that need to be thrown out as well. Lameness. So sheep that are lame, they don't spend as much time grazing, therefore they don't put on the weight. They're high risk of not getting in lamb. And then if we fast forward to lambing time, if a sheep's not eating, it's going to be really high risk of pregnancy toxemia. It's going to be light in body condition score, so lamb's going to be light. It's going to lactate poorly. All these outcomes are negative that we want to avoid. So sheep that are lame, we need to look harder at. to decide, can we improve those sheep or should they be thrown out? And I will take you through our step-by-step guide. And I will show you a video of how we actually took out the lame sheep. Teeth. So, contrary to what a lot of us believe, teeth, there's not a lot of literature that backs up sheep that are broken mouth will not perform for the next 12 months. And if we think about what our quick examination is doing, it's looking at 8 teeth. The chompers, in terms of what's actually doing the mastication and the hard work, are all at the back, and none of us have ever looked at the back of a sheep's teeth. We're looking twice at sheep that have got bad teeth, but if they've got broken mouth, but they're otherwise in fantastic condition, they're clearly coping in the environment. So again, I'll talk you through that, but it's not an automatic cull if a sheep's missing a teeth or starting to wear down teeth, or even all teeth are gone if other things give them a tick. And the impact of age. So it's really standard practice that, this time of year, it might be, what are we? We might be, blue tags might be all going off the farm this year, 2015 drop sheep. That might be a practice. It might be the next age group, the black taggers. We do know the older the sheep, the more likely that it will succumb to ewe mortality. Things like hypocalcemia really go up with older sheep. So they're higher risk of certain issues, they're higher risk of dying, but the depreciation on losing an extra 2% ewes for the year is much less than the depreciation on ewes 12 months ago when we were paying $450 for replacement ewes. So we're just thinking about that. Is it at what point is the threshold getting too high? And that will vary a lot on the sheep you've got, because as a general rule, the bigger the sheep, the quicker it dies. Your small superfine merinos can be still really productive at 7 or 8 years of age, whereas your big composite ewes, 6 years of age, their mortality rate starts to move up quickly. So again, we're assessing them on their merits. If we've got an old ewe, but teeth are good, she's sound, she's raised lambs all her life, udder's good, we're going to give her another year. If she's 7 and she's starting to lose condition, we're getting rid of her because she's not going to handle another 12 months. I think I just spoke about all that. So, how well can you say that? Cheers. You said it right, Basil? Yeah. Seriously, can you read that or not? Yep. Okay. So, if we start on the right-hand side, because the first thing I want us to think about here is I'm going in and feeling the udder straight away. And anything with a bad udder, as I said before, with those lesions I described, is just automatically out, because we know that animal will not be profitable in a lamb production system. If it's a merino sheep and it's 2 years of age and you've got wethers, chuck them in with the wethers, because that's all it's going to be good for, and that is potentially something to do, but otherwise we don't want the sheep. So on the right-hand side, as soon as we assess that udder and we identify a problem, they're just out. We're not bothering mouthing, we're not condition scoring those sheep. If they've got a sound udder, we're going, what's the body condition score of this sheep? If its condition score is fine, then we're keeping that sheep, because it's clearly handling the environment, and we don't have to worry about it too much more, because it's fit to join, it's sound udder, and its condition score is fine. If it's light in condition, I should use this little spotlight. If it's light in condition, we're going, well, why is this sheep light in condition? Is it an older sheep, or is it a young sheep? So if it's a young sheep and it's sound in condition, and it's lost some condition, we want to try and put that condition back on the sheep. We don't just want to throw it out if we can't find another reason to cull it. If it's light in condition and it's lame, that's when we're probably going to go, righto, there's 2 reasons why this sheep's not going to give us good reproductive outcomes next year. They're going to be culled. Similarly, with the teeth, if we find that those sheep that are light are unsound in the mouth, they're going to be culled. So that's that side covered. Over here, our lame sheep, we're taking them off at the very start of the process, and we're looking at these sheep with the intention to cull them if we can find anything else wrong with them. So they've already got a 1 strike, and we're looking for that 2nd strike as a reason to cull them. So again, if they're lame and they're significantly lighter than the mob, they're out. And similarly, if they were old sheep, we'd be culling them. sort of made a comment there about how do we treat these sheep, and I think that's where, if it's foot abscess, you might go through a trim and an antibiotic program. If it's foot rot, you probably need to think about, well, how's the whole farm? How are we going to improve that? But they're individual disease conditions that you can discuss with your vet. But, so just to summarise that, it's anything with a bad udder is immediately out, and then if we get any of age, teeth, lameness, or condition score, if we get 2 of those, they're out. So you need 2 of the others, but lameness on its own is a cull. So then we put this into practice with some case studies. So 3 farms, one was a composite flock, one was more of a traditional first cross flock, although they were transitioning into composites, and the other one were merinos. We wanted to put this into practice. So the classing process, essentially run your ewes up a race, and I'll show you a quick video. Actually, I will just show the video because they were managing their livestock to the gold standard, weren't quite getting the I didn't know the audio was going to be on survival that we were hoping they would get. So So essentially, Nick's here under the tree, and he's got a rope there attached to to his yards, and every sheep that goes past that's lame, he's pulling on the rope so he can take those sheep off. Why is he doing like that? Anyone that's drafted, which I'm sure most people here have drafted sheep, when the sheep is about 5 or 6 metres away from you, it runs at you quickly and you don't see the lameness. By standing back there, the sheep just naturally walk up and out they go, and it worked really, really well. It was actually that was Nick's idea, and worked a treat. And then you've got all your lame sheep right from the start that you're going to look at with a harsh set of eyes right from the start. The rest of the sheep then come up the race, and this is the process. There's a video here in a second which is just played in quick speed, which just shows two races being done. I don't know how many sheep are in there, maybe it's 30 a race, so 60 sheep. And I think that's about 7 minutes. So it's it's a pretty quick procedure. We're not stuffing around with these sheep with any real detail. We're hands in, looking at the condition, not condition scoring them if they're clearly in good nick, unless they've got a lot of wool on them. We're really looking for those outliers and a quick mouth of anything that needs a mouth. Obviously with tag colours, we're able to assess the age very, very easily. So it's a pretty quick procedure, probably mouthing 10 or 15% of the mob, and condition scoring a similar number, but we are checking the udder on every single sheep. We put 2 farms, we did it like this. 1 farm, we did it through a handler. I reckon this was a lot quicker. My working dog's not that good, so maybe if you had good working dogs and a handler, you'd get the flow a lot better, but we found this to work really, really well. So, the fitness of the ewes. So right from the start, these are the percentages of sheep we threw out as unfit. Now, some of you will think that they're really high, and they are pretty high. But interestingly, I'll talk you through these farms. So farm 1 is the first cross composite farm. He's been buying land and keeping as many sheep as possible for the last few years. So he's running a lot of sheep that probably you wouldn't normally run, but he's just needed the numbers. And sheep were pretty dear. This work was done 18 months ago, so sheep were fairly expensive at the time. Farm 2, that farm 1, Nick would do a pretty quick assessment of whether a sheep was going to survive the next 12 months, and if he felt like they were going to survive, they stayed on the farm, and that was it. Farm 2 had been wet and drying sheep for 4 or 5 years and getting rid of sheep that were more than 6 years of age. So that was sort of his culling process. Farm 3 was the merino farm that we only did the merinos joined to terminals. So they're the sheep that are already been thrown out of the good flock. And so there was a lot of old sheep. They, probably typical of southwest Victorian merino people, not getting wonderful lamb repro rates, maybe 85, well, probably reasonable for our environment, but 85, 90%. weaning rates out of merinos, so trying to hold on to as many sheep as possible to join to a terminal. But you wouldn't expect 43% in the whole farm for anyone else if you looked at all their sheep. But anything 4 years and below was still in the merino to merino flock. Just a breakdown of what we saw. So as I described, Farm 1 was holding on to everything, so there was a lot of sheep on his farm that were quite old, and we culled them because they were old or maybe condition score as well. Farm 2 was this guy that had been wet. I reckon this really shows up that wet and drying does not get rid of your bad udder sheep. So a quarter of his sheep that we threw out still had bad udders, even though he'd been wet and drying for years. That's my 20-minute timer. And Farm 3, the merinos that they were holding on to, so a lot of skinny sheep, very few bad udders. Now, I reckon this is what we're seeing is that merinos tend not to get the mastitis that our higher producing crossbred sheep do get, and I just think that shows up again. They actually were wet and drying those sheep and getting rid of sheep that were empty because a lot of sheep had been thrown in there because they were empty out of the merino, so essentially it was a two years of failing to rear a lamb. So this is now just looking at just the scanning percentages, looking at these sheep. So Farm 1, 160% in the fit, 141 in the unfit. Farm 2, 180, 171. Farm 3, 179. Farm 3 had a really short joining. It was about 3 weeks. They would have caught them later, but we just focused on that first joining to follow these 3 because we didn't want to have to sort of monitor 2 lots of lambing. You see there a 17% difference, 16% difference in scanning rates. Now, one thing we weren't able to pull apart, but I reckon would be fascinating if we could, would be all the sheep with bad udders that had been failing to rear lambs in the years prior, and it was particularly evident at Nick Harvey's place. These big fat ewes that were probably scanning twins every single year and never rearing a lamb. So we've got probably a bit of an increase in conception from those repeated failing to rear ewes being in the unfit category. It would have been great to pair off those bad udder sheep for the scanning component to see how they actually do scan up. They're bloody good sheep to sell on Auctions Plus, the ewes with bad udders. Once you get them pregnant, get rid of them because they're not going to be any good for you. That's obviously taking the piss. So ewes are 4.4 times more likely to be scammed empty if they're classed as unfit. And that was sort of a take-home message. Just want to follow through, so Farm 2. And I reckon I've honed in on this one because we were able to split the ewes up more based on the problems they had, whereas the other 2 farms, we weren't able to split them up quite as well. So top table are all singles, then twins, then triplets. And I want you to sort of really focus here on what happened with these sheep with bad udders. So in our single sheep, our fit ewes, 99% marking, our bad udder ewes, 77%. So we're just asking them to raise 1 lamb, they're crossbred ewes, and 23% couldn't do it. There's absolutely no money in those sheep. It's pretty clear. These cut you, $2.50, $3 worth of wool a year. They have to go. The skinny, lame ewes and the others were still doing an okay job. And I think just on that question earlier about scanning, there's clearly 4 or 5% twins in this single group to get 99%. So I just think it shows how we get this error rate in those scannings. When we look at the udders in the twins, 125%, which is very ordinary. He was at 162% in his fit sheep. Interestingly, the skinny lame ewes, they actually did a really good job. And the other ones, which is mostly our older sheep, had a reduced marking percentage of 146%. And our triplets, all in together, the unfit ewes were at 151% versus 226. So it was pretty, just talking to these producers when they did this, one of the guys he doesn't really go around his ewes at lambing time. His wife and his workers sort of do most of that. And he went for a drive on a Sunday around the farm, and he went into this one paddock, and he's like, why is there so many dead lambs in this paddock? Like, it's well sheltered, it's a good paddock. And he said to his wife, how do we, what's happened in that paddock? And she said, oh, man, they're the ones with all the bad udders. And it was just obvious, just the amount of what he said was stillborn twins, which clearly wouldn't have been, they would have been born alive and never got a drink, that were in there, was amazing. So, I showed this earlier, 136% in our fit, 119 in the unfit. Lambs had a 21% higher risk of death from scanning through to marking if their mother had been classed as having a bad udder. And I think that's the real take home here, is they're the sheep that just, there's absolutely no place for them. And talking to producers, it's not something many of them are actually focusing in on. Cost benefit, I see I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go through this, but Basil Doonan did a cost benefit analysis, and I'll focus here on the return per ewe. Worked out $4 to $8 return from doing this. We costed it about 40 cents per ewe to do it, and I think a 20 and 10 times return on capital, but the real question, would producers do it? 2/3 of them said they would. They'd embrace this at that cost. And Basil approached people he knew would give them a reliable answer or truthful answer, and that was the feedback he got from them. So I think it's really worthwhile us talking to producers about this. Probably going out, holding their hand for doing 200 or 300 sheep. Maybe it's a day, and then you can leave them to their own devices to do it. You definitely don't need to be there to do every sheep. Although interestingly, a couple of these blokes said, could you do that for us every year? I said no, but it's definitely something you could do if you actually were looking for that work and wanted to be involved in it. So there's a toolkit. We've got a ute guide, a ewe assessment overview, udder assessment. We've got these videos. They're all on. Are they? They actually are on YouTube if you look for them. But they will be up on MLA's website at some stage. I think they're still just getting final very soon. Take home message. Age isn't the only factor. Got to get your hands out, condition score, look at udders, mouth the sheep that are in otherwise poor condition, and look at those sheep that are lame, and help your producers make informed decisions. And that's the team, the rest of the team that were involved on it. So, and that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Have we got time for questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
One question. Penny, have we got a mic, please, somebody? Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. That fantastic work. It's opened up my eyes a little bit more as to what the size of that effect blew me away. And I'll bring it back to genetics. Having done a bit of genetics in the dairy industry and how much work they put into udder conformation, there's lots of heritability there. Do you think we could turn this into a breeding value around udder conformation if it's got that bigger effect?
Yeah, look, I'm definitely not the person to answer that, but absolutely. I mean, you'd love to see I don't think there is yet, but the longevity sort of index in sheep, you'd love to see that at some stage, which you'd think there's a fair bit of data out there in some of these composite flocks that we could do that. Probably not so much in the merinos, but yeah, I think there's and I think the need for it is in the composites because of the wastage that we're seeing on that other stuff. So yeah, I think absolutely. Yep.
Thanks.
I'll just comment on that. We are actually recording that so the NLP trial records all other scores that.
Can you elaborate on your acronym, please, Lexi? Thank you.
Project, which is concluded at the Batmore site, about to be concluded at our site. There's also a Ingley site and a New England site and a training site. And we turn all the ewes over at each site and we score their udders. And we have a pretty comprehensive shape, functionality. We all record whether they've had a mechanical injury, so
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. I've got a little gift here for you. Can we just show Andrew again our appreciation, please?